Welcome to the Martin Bailey Photography Podcast. It's August 26, 2021, and this is episode 750. Today I'm very happy and honoured to be joined by one of the premier microscope photographers in the field, the award-winning Håkan Kvarnström. To give you a little bit of background, I have admired Håkan's work for a while, and I actually was communicating with him about 4 or 5 months ago when I first got my microscope, and a number of times since. But I needed to learn more about the microscopes and microphotography before I could hold a semi-intelligent conversation with someone at the level of Håkan. So I asked him to wait a while, but I've been really looking forward to this conversation, and it didn't disappoint. So I hope you enjoy it. All of the images that we are going to talk about and links and everything are at mbp.ac/750. So go over there for that. If you are not looking on a device that you can actually see the images on while you listen. Okay, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Håkan Kvarnström. So Håkan, it is absolutely an honor to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Thank you, Martin. Delighted to be here.
I'm very new to microscopes or micrography. It's been like 3 months or 4 months now since I got my first microscope. I have had no experience with them until that point. So I am looking forward to learning some stuff from you today, but tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, how you got into photography even initially before micrography, microscope photography.
Yes, well, I've had different cameras since I was a kid. I grew up in a small village in Sweden and started photography quite early, having cameras, mostly analog at the time. But the photography interest took off when I sort of got kids and I wanted to start documented celebration, weddings, birthdays, and family events, and also a dedicated motorcycle biker, and I wanted to document the road trips. And so that's where I got into photography more and more over the years.
Okay.
And also for the last few years, besides microphotography, I'm also starting to get an interest in portraiture and other types of normal photography, and also moving into medium format cameras, digital, of course. And so I'm not only focusing on microphotography nowadays. So
I see. Well, you are obviously one of the first names that comes to mind. As I've looked at your website and seen more of your images, I realized that I had seen some of your images before I bought my microscope, and you're probably one of the forerunning people in the field. And I know that, as I was looking through them, thinking, hang on, that's one of those photos that I showed my wife to say, this is why I need a microscope. And so it's really is amazing to be sitting here talking with you. We'll touch on some of the things that, you were talking a moment ago about your other photography. It's great that you do other types of photography, and it also plays a part in how beautiful your micro photography is as well. And we're going to talk about all of that as we get through this. So when did the microscopes come onto the scene?
I'm a scientist by heart and education, and it started maybe 6-7 years ago when I was reading a local website with classified ads, and I saw a very nice microscope for sale. And I did have a microscope as a kid. I sold it in my late teens, but all of a sudden I got this itch again and realized I definitely needed a new microscope to explore the micro world. And I'm somewhat interested in both the micro world but also the macro world. I'm a dedicated Star Trek fan and like stars, the universe, galaxies, and I guess it was more of a lucky strike that I found a microscope before I bought the telescope. I think the good thing about microscope is that you can do it all year around. You don't have to have good weather. You don't have to. Sweden can be quite cloudy, but the microscope I can use all year around. and not dependent on light pollution and stuff like that. So
Well,
it's a very good hobby.
yeah, I mean, I have to admit, a big part of me jumping into this year has been the pandemic. You know, we can't really get
Yeah.
out. I can't go on tours. I can't do a lot of the things that I usually would do. And so that was part of it. And then for me, Don Komarechka, a good friend of mine, wrote a book that I reviewed, and he talked about shooting some macro work with microscope lenses, the objectives. And I was looking at that, and I was thinking, oh, this is really cool, but I don't think I want to get into botching things together, so I'm just going to buy a microscope. And it was then when I saw
Yes.
some of your work as well. So yeah,
Yeah,
I understand
actually,
that.
I got his book last week as well. So I
Oh,
mean, it's
brilliant.
amazing. It's an amazing book.
It is. Well, I was lucky enough. I mean, he sent me the PDF because he wanted me to review and write a few words about it. So I was lucky enough to get an early
Yeah.
sneak peek at that. But yeah, it's so you got into the microscope. You told me that you recently have started working with a 60 times water immersion lens, and that to me, I was thinking, okay, so I knew about. My microscope came with a 100 times oil immersion lens, but I didn't even realize that there was such a thing as a water immersion lens. So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about that. Is it really difficult to work with liquids and lenses?
Well, it's the water immersion is quite good. I mean, the basic problem with microscopy is that the higher magnification you want, the more important it is to have a good level of refraction indexes in the whole light chain, going from the condenser to the specimen through the objective and so on. And the higher refractive index you get, the more resolution you can squeeze out of the system in a way. And the problem with the air gap, normally if you have lower magnification objectives, you have an air gap between the specimen and the objective, but you can't have that for 60, 100, and even higher magnifications because the image quality will degrade. And then you use immersion, and the most common way is to use oil. The problem with oil, of course, is that it's very messy and you
Yeah,
get oil everywhere, and you need to clean the objectives using special cleaning fluids and stuff. So it's something I try to avoid, even though it gives you probably the best resolution in most cases. Water immersion is sort of a middle way. You have lower refractive index, but it's good enough to dramatically increase the resolution compared to using air gap. And you don't have to deal with the mess. You can just wipe it off with a lens tissue afterwards. So
I see.
it's very simple to use, very quick, no smell, no mess, and you get really good image qualities. And the other advantage of using water immersion is that if you compare to oil immersion, where you might have a working distance of maybe 0.15 millimeter, you get double that with water immersion. So you can image much thicker specimens.
Yeah.
So if you have a small animal, for example, or if you have a thick algae, you can get a better image quality because of the increased working distance. So I can definitely recommend using water immersion lenses.
So are you, and this is me sort of trying to learn from a master here, not not so much providing something for the audience. I'm totally selfishly trying to learn something here. So when you're using either water or oil, are you generally using, you've got your specimen under a cover slip and you've got the oil on top of the cover slip, or are you, yeah?
Yeah, that's the way. I mean, you have first of all, you have a glass slide where you put your specimen, right? And then you put a drop of water on the glass slide, and then you cover it with a cover slip. So you have glass, water, glass, and then you put water on top of the cover slip again to go into the objective. So you have a sort of an uninterrupted chain of high refractive indices going from the bottom of the cover glass all the way through the objective. And that is what gives you the increase in resolution. And there are also objectives where you can dip directly into the specimen, but those are more for in vitro procedures when you do live cell imaging and not very good resolution perhaps, but for specific purposes only.
I see. So I recently replaced filled the 4 slots on my turret of my microscope with the plan achromatic lenses, and the highest magnification I got was a 60, but it's an air 60. It's not made for going in water. And I understand what you're saying, that the jump from 40 to 60 even, and you can see that the image, the resolution, it drops relatively relatively quickly, and just when you switch them out. But it is still really nice to be able to get in that close and still be able to see. I've still got the 100 times oil objective, so I think I'm gonna put that on and give that a try at some point.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, in my view, the 40x air is difficult enough to use. I rarely go with an air gap higher than 40x magnification because it becomes almost impossible to get good image quality. I have a long working distance 50x,
I see,
which are designed to be used without the cover slip, which I use for more macro-like work, right? When we have an insect eye, for example, or something you want. But using a cover slip and then have a 60x air will not give you much quality. I would
I
say.
haven't been using it with cover slips, so I haven't really used cover slips very much at all yet. But I've got a few questions about staining and some of the other things later, so I'll save that. So
but it's very important. It's only the really low magnification objectives like 4x and to some degree 10x can be used without cover slips. Otherwise, they need to be specially designed at higher magnifications to be used without the cover slip. So there are special objectives you need to use if you don't have a cover slip on. Otherwise, you will not get any image quality at all.
Well, the 400s work the 40. So with the 40 times objective works pretty well. But the 60, I have found it's pretty difficult to get anything decent with. But it's nice to have the plan achromatic. So that makes a big difference over the original ones that came on my relatively cheap microscope. So that's nice just there.
Agree. And microscope lenses are exactly like cameras, right? Or normal photography. It's not the camera body that is important, it's the lenses, right? So if you have put all your money and spending on the right lenses, that will give you the quality you need, not the camera or the microscope stand as such.
You talked in your email about the importance of camera techniques, good composition and lighting. Tell us a little bit more about how that sort of plays into your microphotography.
That was one of the reasons, as well as I started to learn more about normal photography, about composition, about how to use lighting and flashes, and how to sort of work with the foreground, the background, and the subject, and try to use well-known photography techniques also to improve the quality of the images from using the microscope. So I think the basic principles on what makes a good photograph is still valid, even though it's a microphotograph. And I think if you look at my images, many of them have clean backgrounds and so on, but I'm starting now to change my artistic language, if you like, to have more details in the background, trying to use different foregrounds, and to also working with not overdo the focus stacking part so everything gets sharp, but also try to make out of focus areas to use the bokeh or what do you call it, also in microphotography. So by learning normal photography better and to understanding the masters of photography over the years, I think I can also start making better microphotographs, which appeals to a wider audience, perhaps, than not only the micro nerds, so to speak.
So I'm fully with you. I've found that as I've done certain or worked with certain specimens, that I've left a fair amount out of focus. Because we are working with such shallow depth of field, pretty much everything has to be focus stacked to a degree. But I agree, it doesn't all. You don't have to have sharp from front to back. It's much better sometimes to just let it fade off into the bokeh, as they say.
And I think you are way ahead of me there in terms of maturity as a photographer, because I have an engineering background, and for an engineer, if you can make it sharp, you make it sharp. But as an artist, you have to think differently. And I guess I'm maturing later. I have recently learned that what makes a good photograph, and I'm learning all the time. But I haven't really implemented that fully into my micrographs yet. But I'm working on it.
Well, there's one of the photographs. I mean, you've sent me 8 photographs to talk about, but one of them has really nice layers of focus with the specimens in the background and a few in the foreground that are very much like you just said. So you're doing it. It's there, and it's beautiful.
I am. I'm trying.
So. Yeah. Oh, you're
trying
achieving.
To use the techniques I've learned in other fields of photography.
Yeah, we might as well right now start to work through your images. You've sent me 8 shots. The first one, can I guess what this is before you tell me, just in case?
Yeah.
Is it fishing wire? A knot in fishing? Is it? No. Is it? So it's a natural organism?
It is.
Oh, okay. And then I have no idea. I thought it was fishing wire.
No, it's. Do you want to know what it is?
Yes, please.
It is the hair from my 10-year-old daughter.
Okay. So
which I tied in a knot.
Oh, wow.
And photographed.
So it looks as though you've polarized it some there as well. You've got some color coming through. Yeah. Tell us about this.
I use polarized light. I mean, that's one of the tricks you should learn, or everyone should learn, using microscopy, because it's very cheap and it's very easy to do. Just to have a set of polarizers, and you can twist the polarizers to different angles and get different color effects.
Most of what I've done so far has been exactly that. That's such a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And then I tied the hair in a knot, and I used super glue to glue the hair strand to a piece of rubber, each end to a piece of rubber, and I used super glue to get it to have exactly the right tension.
Wow.
The problem I had was sometimes I tied it not too hard, and sometimes I tied the knot too loose. So it took a while before I found the perfect knot.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to see because it's so small, so you have to guess a bit and try it out. But in the end, I got the results I wanted.
Wow.
I think I used a 20x objective for that one.
Yeah. Is your daughter fair-haired then?
She is white. She has white hair.
Okay, that's why it looks so translucent. Yeah. Excellent. So it's such a beautiful shot. The coloring is. Did you do anything? Not so much the the color of the hair, but the background and everything. What did you use for the background?
Well, I used a retarder. I have a retarder in the microscope as well, and more or less, if you tweak the retarder, you can get any color you like.
I see.
So I usually try the different dials and try different angles to get the colors I like and want, and then that's where I end up. So it's trial and error, more or less.
Wow. Yeah, I'm getting loads of ideas here. This is such fun. Yeah, I realize now, of course, as you rotate one of the 2 polarizers, you go from white to black, and then there's loads of shades between. So
yes,
I see.
It's
now.
amazing. It's amazing to work with those filters. You can get any color you like, more or less. So it looks more complicated than it is. I think it's easier when you are playing around with it.
Oh yeah. I know now that I could have bought some for like $100 that fit onto my microscope, but I couldn't find anything that I could use. So I started with old polarizing filters, just sort of wedging them in here and there. And then I bought some circular drill bits and drilled circles out of polarizer filters and clean the edges up, and I've actually inserted those in, one in the filter holder above my condenser, and the other one I'll take the head off of my microscope and put it in on top of the tube where the light comes up. So
yeah, that works.
Yeah,
that works.
It's working pretty good.
Yeah. And I think this one, I used a 20x objective, which was a long working distance designed to be used without a cover slip. That's why I got the resolution. You can actually see the sort of the scales on the hair, the surface of the hair.
Yeah, that's the next thing. I've got the Plan Achromatic 20 times in my Amazon cart. It's waiting for the next time, and they're not that expensive. It's like, I mean, the ones that I've been getting, it's like, I think it's $60 for the next one, so yeah. I'll get that. It's a good.
No, but it's a good investment. I think if there's anything you should spend money on in microscopy, it's the objectives. I mean, that's the secret to everything, right? So, and also to try to have. I mean, it's different if you have, depending on what you are aiming for. But if you want to do video, for example, it's good to have longer working distance so you can get higher depth of field, because video gets really boring if you only see 1/2 of a micrometer every time.
Yeah.
And then you have to move it up and back and forth to get focus. So then I use longer working distance objectives to get more in focus. You lose resolution, but you gain depth of field.
Yeah. I've done a few videos just to because it's been so amazing to see some of the stuff that I'm looking at. But I can't really, when you're having to tweak the focus all the time, it's much better when you use the 4 times or 10 times. So let's take a look at the next one. This is amazing. Tell us about the second image you sent.
Yes, that's a green algae. It's one of the biggest green algae. It's called Microsterias. And can be up to maybe 0.3 millimeters, 300 micrometers in diameter. And that one is actually stained. So I stained it with Calcofluor white, which is a really useful stain. So you see it stained the outer shell in a way in blue, so it radiates in blue light, and yet the red one you can see is the red parts is the chlorophyll that autofluoresces in all chlorophyll autofluoresce when you shine them with ultraviolet light. So that's the natural light. The blue parts are stained and
ultraviolet
light.
And
it turned out to look like a man with 2 eyes and a nose, and so it's
So how are you getting the light in there? Are you shining in from the side, or have you got something in your?
Well, I have a fluorescence attachment to the microscope, so it's like a top light. Instead of illuminating the specimen from below, you illuminate it from the above. So there's a small mirror cube with fluorescent filters in them, and you radiate them with a very wide bandwidth light source ranging from like 300 nanometers up to maybe 1,000 nanometers, and then you have filters to only let through specific wavelength. So you only get, like, let's say in this case I used, I think, a 340 nanometer filter. So specific stains goes with specific wavelength. So you can filter out the rest. So you get a black background because everything is filtered out except for the radiation or the photons with a specific wavelength designed for that stain. So it's a very useful technique to get high resolution and to get specific features of a specimen to be visible, and you can take away the rest.
Wow. Yeah, this is probably one of these shots that I would have said to my wife, look, I need a microscope because of this and that, and I've found that sometimes then they're still out of reach because I need a particular type of microscope. But it's all great. It's such amazing work. Tell us about the next one,
The next one is also a green algae. It's called Botryococcus brownie. It's a Latin name for it. You can see that is an interesting algae because it contains so much oil. It's, I think, 40% of the biomass is oil.
Wow.
And when you put it between the cover glass and the slide, and the water starts to evaporate, it squeezes on the algae, and when it squeezes on the algae, the weight of the cover glass pushes out the oil in small droplets around the surface. So you get this fantastic effect where you can see all these small oil droplets around the edges of the specimen.
Oh, wow.
And in fact, I think this type of algae can be used to produce biofuels. So you can grow them, even though they grow slowly, but they have been trials to do biofuel from these type of algae.
I was thinking that's amazing. I would have guessed that they were air bubbles, but I thought, he's too careful to get air bubbles in there. So
No,
yeah.
it's oil.
Yeah, wow,
And
amazing.
you can see, if you look closely on the image, you can see the sort of the channels inside where the oil flows.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
yeah.
there's.
It's amazing, absolutely beautiful. And the next one, this beautifully symmetrical shot. Tell us about this.
Yeah, that's a Cosmarium. It's also a green algae, and that is also polarized light. And there I also used a slight sort of, I think I used some retarders and filters as well to get the sort of the shining effect in the background.
I see.
And it looks like a world within. I mean,
Yeah.
It looks like there's some kind of a shell where you have a secret world inside. You can actually see how transparent the shell is, and you can see all the chloroplasts inside it. So I think it's very beautiful in a way.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's so interesting that all these algae you have in the sea actually produces equal amount of oxygen as the rainforests do. So they are, even though you can't see them, if you take the diatoms and the algae you have in the sea, and also the cyanobacteria are one of the major contributors to the oxygen production and also the carbon capture in the world. So it's an they're amazingly important, even though most people have never seen them.
And that is why it's so important that global warming makes the seas too hot, and then this stuff starts to die off, or you end up with too much of one. We have this thing in Japan. I haven't a clue what you would call it in English, but it's sort of like the red tide. If I
yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying? It's a type of red algae but it grows so thick that the algae itself changes the temperature of the water below because the light can't get through it. So it's crazy stuff.
No, I mean, these are it's important with the balance. You can't be too warm, it can't be too cold, and you have to be careful. So, and also if there becomes too many of them, they fall to the floor of the sea, and they start consuming oxygen when they break down and creating these dead bottoms.
I see.
Where the fish dies and so on. So I mean, to find the right balance is important, and I think these are too important to be ignored. You have to work on.
Well, nature did a really good job of finding that balance until we started messing it up.
Yes, unfortunately.
Oh dear. Okay, so the next one. This is it's simply amazing. It looks like a wheat. The head of a wheat.
Many people
plant.
say that. It's like a wheat, but it's called dinobrion or dinobrion. I don't know how to say it in English. It's also a Latin name, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually a colony of it's called a golden algae or algae, and they are quite interesting because they have these two hairs at the front flagella that they can actually swim, so they can move around in the water, and as you can see, there's a red red spot in each one of them, and they can sense light and they can swim towards light.
Oh wow! So are these classified like fully as an animal then, or because
No, it's still
it's
an algae.
still an algae. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they are also very useful, or they are very efficient in cleaning lakes and ponds because they eat bacteria. So they can actually, I mean, if there's a bacteria-rich lake, if you have a lot of these, they will eat the bacteria and convert them to biomass instead.
Wow.
So very useful in many ways, but they smell bad, unfortunately.
Really? Oh dear.
Yeah.
Well, they don't look smelly. They look absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, but
Wow.
the looks can be deceiving.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the same photo that I see in your background. Is this a feather?
Yeah, it's a peacock feather.
Oh wow.
So that is, I think that's 10x magnification. And I used, it also illuminated from the top. So I use LED lights from, I think I had 4 different LED lights. And then I use ping pong balls as like a light box, or what do you call it, soft box.
Yeah. Wow.
So I put 1 ping pong ball over the specimen, and then I put ping pong balls on each light to get the diffused light, really diffused light as possible. And then I turned on also the normal illuminator on the microscope to get the very faint background light. And because I had such a low voltage on, it was almost a red or orange.
Wow.
That's why you got the orange color.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. So were the ping pong balls white, or they weren't? Yeah. Okay.
I use white.
Great diffusers.
I have 2 sizes. I use 2 sizes. I have the normal ones, which I normally put for smaller specimens, and I cut a hole for the objective, so the objective goes inside half of the ball. I use half balls.
Wow.
And then I have a bigger jumbo ball size for the bigger specimens. A very good trick, actually.
Yeah, I can imagine it, because it's thin and yet it's a good shape, and obviously sort of probably 50% translucent or so. So it's it's amazing. I'm learning so much. So this next one is the one that I was talking about earlier, where you've got the different layers of bokeh with the background containing stuff. Tell us about this.
Yes, that specimen is called Xanthidium. It's also some kind of a desmid. It belongs to the group of desmids. It's a green algae as well. And it, in this case, I used focus stacking, but I focus stacked them in, I think, 3 or 4 sections. I've realized that it's very difficult to do focus stacking and get everything perfect at once. You need to break it down into several stacks. So here I used the stack with the surrounding algae, the smaller ones was 1 stack, and I used one set of stack for the foreground, the specimen in this case. And then I actually took a single shot where almost everything was out of focus for the real background. And then you need to combine these images into one image when you do the focus stacking, because you can do it in the stacker if you include the images and then you do retouching in Serene Stacker or Helicon Focus, for example. So, but it takes some work. It's done at the same time, but requires more manual work to get the final result.
I see. Yeah, I've really not used the retouching module in Helicon Focus yet. I've had a few plays with it, but it always seems a bit clunky. I'd probably end up jumping into Photoshop to do but I see what you're saying. Definitely can understand the necessity and the reasons why you would do that. 1 stack for a certain area, another stack for other areas. I think that's a very, very good trick, because I mean, if you have 2 deep stacks, for example, if you do more macro-like work, when you have thicker specimens, you might have hundreds of photographs that you need to stack. And the problem is that some blurry areas might
become sharp again because you are reaching deeper into the specimen, and then the stacker gets confused.
Yeah.
Is it sharp or should it be out of focus?
Yeah.
And then you get artifacts in the
Yeah.
image. So then you really need to break it down. Okay, focus on the surface first, and then you get the surface clean. Then you can focus on the other parts later, and so on, and try to divide and conquer your way forward to
Yeah.
to get a good final image.
Oh, that's great
It can
advice.
take hours. You can
I'm
spend
sure.
hours on this,
Yeah.
but I mean the results. I think it's getting better
Yeah.
when you're doing it like that.
Yeah.
Especially for the deeper stacks.
It's great advice. I'll give it a try. I'm not a very patient post-processor, so the good thing with Helicon that I've found is that once you've processed a stack, you can reprocess it with different settings pretty quickly, can't you? So I've been playing with different settings and going through, but I get a little bit frustrated with the retouching because you sort of click something and then it takes a while, even with an 8-core CPU iMac. So that does get a little bit sort of on the edge of my limits of patience with photo retouching. But
I normally use two stackers. I use Serene Stacker, which is one commonly used software in photography, and I used Helicon Focus, which is the other one. And I think they're both good. They both have strengths and weaknesses, and I think the retouching module is better in Serene. It's easier to use, and I use that quite a lot actually, because let's say you have a stationary specimen, but you have maybe bacteria swimming around, or you have other small creatures swimming around, moving during your shoot. They will leave streaks when you stack, so you get black streaks on the image, a lot of black streaks. And then I also have a trick that I always shoot a way out of focus image, which is very blurry, so I get the perfect background.
Yeah.
And then I include that image into the stack, even though I won't use it for any of the focused parts, but I can remove all the streaks by selecting that image as the source and then just painting away all the streaks with the out of focus background. So that is a good trick to use if you want to clean up the background and maybe you don't have an image in the stack that is completely clean. That's why I really go far beyond focus to just get that image into the stack as well.
That's such great advice. I wouldn't have thought of that. So yeah, write that one down. another great piece of advice. So this final one looks like Christmas crackers. What's this?
That's also a green algae called Spirogyra. It's very interesting because it has the chloroplasts have a spiral shape, so they are like a tube with spirals inside. And if you see the middle parts there, you can see them with pure autofluorescence, meaning you can only see the red shape, the red spiral, which is the other ones that are green as well have been stained.
I see.
So actually I took, it was a lucky strike here as well, I took 3 different stains and I mixed them in various portions in different bottles, and then I added the Spirogyra into those and I mixed it, and then I pulled strains up from the jars and rinsed them, put them on the slide, and some of them were stained, some were not, and I got this pattern. So I tried to stretch them to straighten them out, and of course they're no thicker than a strain of hair, so they're really, really thin.
Wow. That's amazing that you not only did that with the different stains, but you were able to get them all sort of nicely spread out and everything.
Well, if you have enough of them and you pull them out on a piece of glass, you have to look, of course, to find that small portion. In 99% of the slide looks like a mess. And then you need to look for the composition you want, where something looks nice, and then sometimes you're lucky and sometimes you're not lucky, but sometimes you need to crop a bit to get what you're. But that's the problem with microscopy as well, that you don't have a zoom. You have to live with the based on the magnification you have selected,
Mm.
you have to live with the composition you get, because
Mm.
you can't zoom anything. You can't move closer, you can't move away, and you have no zoom lens. So you have to live with what you get and use crop instead.
Yeah. They call the 4x a scanning lens, don't they? I've heard that the 4x objective called it. It's so amazing just scanning across. I mean, I scan with the 10x as well, depending on what I'm doing, but it just looking across a slide and seeing everything down there and then zooming in, it's well, not zooming, change your objective and getting a closer look, and it's just amazing. I've spent
it's very if you're moving up to maybe 40 or 60 or 100, it's almost impossible to scan a slide because it will take forever.
Yeah.
And by the time you're done, the water has evaporated and you have to start over again. So it's very good to go back quickly to lower magnification to see what you want to focus on.
That's a good point. And I mean, the thing with me so far is that most of what I've been doing is just been crystals, and they hardly change for days. So it's a lot easier to have fun with that.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Now, that's also a really interesting specimen to work with. I mean, different chemicals and crystals and salts and whatever you have, and to see they be amazing shapes and patterns coming from those crystals, especially if you're using polarized light.
Yeah. We watched a good movie on a Saturday afternoon, and I have to admit that a tear dropped down from my eye, and I thought, hang on. And while it was still on my eye, I ran upstairs and got a slide, dropped it onto the slide, and let it dry and polarized. It was amazing, all of the patterns that formed just in the salts in a teardrop. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's like I guess it's the salt, as you said, that does the trick. I mean, it crystallizes.
Yeah. Almost look like snowflakes in some parts. So tell us, we've just seen some amazing specimens. Where do you find them?
Well, that's the good part with microscopy as well as a hobby, that you don't have to, or if you compare to nature photography in general, you have to travel. People go to Iceland, Greenland, Antarctica, whatever they need to go to find good. I mean, there's an inflation in photography that you have to have all those exotic places to go to, right? And I think with microscopy, you don't have to go far. You can go outside and you can find the closest pond, or you can find an insect, or you can find a lake, and you can have a net and drag the net in the water for 1, 2, 3 minutes, and you will have endless of material to look at. And every time you look, even though I've been doing this for like 5, 6, 7 years, every time I look, I see something I have never seen before. There are millions of shapes and species in those samples. And I'm living close to the King's Castle here in Sweden, Drottningholm it's called. They have this English park where they have a huge number of ponds and small islands, and you can walk around. It's open for public, so you can get specimens there, and that's the main source I use for all my findings.
So that's mostly fresh water then?
It's only fresh water, I would say. I haven't done much saltwater photography at all. I'm living close to a lake, which I'm using, and I live close to this park where I take my samples. So on occasion, I have also looked at more marine saltwater specimens, but not that much actually.
Okay.
Mostly fresh water.
That's good to hear. I've got a river near me, and although rivers are running water, and there are some sort of like stagnant pools at the sides in the summertime, and there's always algae in there. So I've been trying to make a day when I can just go down with a couple of tubs and scoop some out and see what I can find.
Yeah, but the trick, if you have running water, is to buy one of those sampling nets, right? So you can put the net into the running water for an hour or so and come back and get the net, and then you have maybe collected quite a few things.
I see. That's a good idea.
Getting more condensed, so you don't have to look. I mean, since you can only look at one drop at a time, it's very good to have a sort of a condensed sample of material.
Yeah. Okay.
Otherwise, you have to look forever.
I'll be on Amazon after talking and seeing if I can find one. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So, what do you do to keep them alive? I mean, I know that you were saying earlier that you have live specimens on your slides. What do you do to keep them alive?
Well, I use simple glass jars. I collect them. I try to figure out what I have using the microscope to see what type of algae or what type of animals I have in there, and I try to find the right conditions for them and read up. I try to read books and see what they like, what type of nutrition they need, how much light they would like to have. Some species want a lot of light, like green algae, some want less. Like cyanobacteria, they don't want much light. So I have a table with wheels that I can push back and forth, and then I have one growing lamp that I use, so I can adjust the light by moving the table back and forth depending on what I'm growing at the time.
Wow.
And then you use nutrition like BG11, which is one common one. I also buy nutrition from Carolina Biological in the US. They have this Algae Grow, which I use. But in many cases, you can buy any plant nutrition bottles from the grocery store to kick off some rapid growth.
Wow. So we talked earlier a little bit about the staining. What sort of things do you do to prepare? Say you're going to sit down for a session and try and capture some of this algae. What sort of things do you do to prepare that the slide for viewing and photographing?
Well, for the majority of the specimens I photograph, I don't do any real preparation. I just take a drop and I put them on the slide. I put the cover glass on and I start photographing. The advantage with my microscope is I'm using also a contrast technique called DIC, differential interference contrast, which is like an optical staining. It uses differences in refraction index to highlight edges and highlight differences. So you can get increased contrast just by using optical means. So that therefore you don't need any stain.
I see.
But for fluorescence microscopy, you need stain because then something needs to be shining when you light them with ultraviolet light, right? So therefore I use various, like chalcofluor white, I think another one is called eosine. It's also one called arcadine orange, I think it's called, which I use, which is like an orange color. And then you put them into the stain for a few minutes, and then you rinse them in water, and then you put them on the slide and put a drop of water on and the cover glass on, and then you blast them with various frequencies of light only, and to see what happens. But the most interesting part, I think, is to find specimens that fluoresce by themselves. You don't have to stain them. You can just try it out with you can buy a flashlight, which sends out like around 300 nanometers or 350 ultraviolet light. And you can go around in the garden, try and see what gives red light, what gives some other color, blue light. And if you find something of interest, you bring it to the microscope and you can use the same technique there and to really see the specimen shining in different colors by themselves.
Wow. I'll have to try that.
There's a really good trick.
Yeah. I have some small ultraviolet like key holders with one LED on it. I don't know if
it's good enough.
Yeah.
You can try that. If you take that one and then you shine that onto some green algae or green leaf, then you should see the red immediately.
Wow. I'll take it out and have a play. Let's see. What techniques do you use? You've already mentioned a number of these to illuminate your specimens. I imagine that you can relatively easily do dark field work with your. Do you do dark field at all?
I do. I have. I mean, the simplest one, of course, being bright field, which is just having a plain light source, and you don't do anything with filters and stuff, and that gives you poor contrast. It's difficult and also to, since many of the specimens you are trying to look at are more or less transparent, they don't have any color. They are like completely transparent, especially if they are swimming in water. So it's very difficult to get good contrast. But there you can use the various techniques to improve that, DIC being one of them, which, but unfortunately being quite expensive compared to many of the others. The most effectful, I would say, and the most beautiful perhaps in a way, is dark field, as you say, and having a black disc, a dark field stop that you put on top of your condenser or inside your condenser to avoid direct illumination onto the specimen. So you only, it gets lights from the sides and from the top, and it gives you completely black background and very colorful images. Not really much details, but as art, I mean, you don't need all the details all the time. It's more like the colors and the shapes and the so a dark field is very simple to build yourself as well. You don't have to buy expensive equipment. You can just use what you
actually have. The listeners will be able to hear it rattling around, but I bought a set of rings that go into my filter on eBay. Someone's making them with a 3D printer. So, and I've had a lot of fun with it. I tried making them myself to begin with, just with a marker pen and some clear files and everything, and then it got everywhere, and I'm like, oh no, I need to just buy some. But they were like $30 on for a full set on.
But definitely worth every penny.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an amazing technique, and I think it's very simple to use as well. And the problem normally with dark field, or in many cases, it works up to the 20x objective. Above the 20x objective is very difficult. You need special equipment, and then you need to use oil. You have to oil the condenser to the underside of the glass slide, which creates a mess, because if you then move the slide back and forth on the stage, the oil starts to drag on the stage. So, but it's if you have the patience and if you have the time, it gives you extreme good resolution, even at high magnification and the dark field. So it's very beautiful images.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to talk to my wife and get permission to buy that 20 times that's in my cart, because it's definitely necessary. The gap between 10 and 40 is huge, so it'd be really nice to have something between.
I would say the 20x is, I think, my most used objective.
I can imagine.
20x is really good to have. I think that's extremely important to have.
Yeah.
Definitely convince your wife to.
And it's not a huge amount of money. I'm gonna get on to her about that if she's in a good mood later. And it's crazy because it's a business expense, but this is how it is, especially with the Corona days. So,
I understand.
So we're trying. I've got a number of questions left, and I'm aware that you've got. We don't want to keep you too long, so we'll try and jump through these a little bit. One of the things that we were going to talk about was depth of field. We've mentioned this a number of times. We are working with such shallow depth of field. Is there anything that we haven't already mentioned that you do to work with that or overcome it?
Well, I mean that's the tricky part. The more resolution you want or need, the higher numerical aperture you need to have on your objective, and the less of depth of field you get. So it's a combination that is not very good in a way, making it more and more difficult to get decent images. And also, then it becomes very sensitive to the distance between the specimen and the cover glass. So the higher up you go, the more sensitive and more difficult it will be to get good images, even though you're using focus stacking. So I think my general recommendation is to, if you want to take pictures, don't select objectives with too small depth of field. Use objectives with a slightly lesser numerical aperture, but gives you more freedom to move up and down and give more depth of field. Also for video, it's crucial, of course. But I mean, it's very difficult because compared to normal photography, when you have meters or at least decimeters or inches of depth of field. Here you have micrometers or half of a micrometer. So it's becomes a challenge, of course, to work on those, especially at high magnifications.
Yeah. So,
but for the 4x and 10x, I think it's fairly okay.
I mean, you could get away with single photos and lots of bokeh on with the 4 or 10. Yeah. So I've been finding that I have a note here about ISO. I've been finding that I've been using ISOs between, sometimes rather than letting my my shutter speed get too low, increasing the ISO to like 800 or 1200, 1600. What sort of ranges are you working with your ISO?
Yeah, well, it depends. I mean, normally the default mode I do, I mean, in most cases we have fairly stationary specimens, right? They don't move very fast, or it can be an algae, they are sitting still, so you don't have to have a fast shutter speed. You can be quite slow. So I set the ISO at 100, and then I just adjust the shutter speed to get decent lighting, right? To get exposure right. The aperture is fixed. You can't change that for a microscope. I mean, it is what it is. So you have the only two things you can play with is ISO and shutter speed.
Yeah.
So I adjust the shutter speed. But if I have moving specimens, like I shot some Vorticella that was moving really fast, then I need to increase the ISO to get the shutter speed I need, and maybe go down to 1,000, 2,000 or something like that. Then I need to go up fairly high. But I do have 100 watt lamp on my microscope, so I have quite a good light. I do have a strong light, so
that's
tweak
the thing.
it up.
Mine's only got a cheap light. I need to see if I can actually change that out.
Yeah, because that's really important to have good lighting. You have really strong light, you can tweak it up dramatically compared to a 20 watts that you might have.
I'll have to take a look. I don't know if I can even change it. I imagine I can with a bit of wrangling.
Yeah. But when I do fluorescence photography, it's different, because those autofluorescence capabilities of these specimens are very weak lights. So I need to go up to maybe 3,000, 4,000 in ISO, and then I need to work with the noise reduction instead in post-processing, and also deconvolution to some degree, instead of and then because I don't want to expose for like 30 seconds. I try to avoid that, and try to maybe 1 or 2 seconds, but then increase ISO. So it's a mix, but you need to have a good camera. I'm using it as normal mirrorless cameras. I don't use the specific microscope cameras. I think it's better to use regular cameras, which
I decided that from the start. I mean, even the expensive microscope cameras are like 20 megapixels, and I wanted a little bit more wiggle room than that. So
definitely, I totally agree.
That's the main thing with me at the moment. I need, without breaking the bank, and even this, it's going to take a lot of wiggling around financially, but I've got to get a better camera adapter. That's the weak link in my system at the moment.
Well, that's the trick, to always try to find the weakest link and then to improve that, to see if you can raise the level of quality. Unfortunately, it's becoming more and more expensive as the weakest links disappear. There will be more expensive weak links to remove.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my microscope, my compound microscope or biological microscope, cost me under $400, which is probably, I don't know, high-end amateur, not professional level. And my stereo microscope was actually about $600. That's probably a better microscope in its class. But a good adapter is probably going to cost me around $1,000, which is about the sum of both of my microscopes. So I'm a little bit cautious about that. I don't.
Yeah, but you might. I mean, we talked about that before, but you might be thinking about designing your own as well, and buying lenses, and that's a possibility as well to
Yeah,
get the cost
I
down a bit.
I think you make it sound easy in your email. I can't really get my head around that just yet. Maybe we'll have to take that offline and see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay, so your work is incredibly artistic. It's probably you're probably making the most artistic micro photography or micro photographs that I've seen. What are your thoughts on this form of photography as an art? You're not just documenting stuff; you're making beautiful art with it. I'm sure you've developed some thoughts on that.
Yes, but I do find it really. I do find these specimens really beautiful, and I think it's so fascinating to see that even though you can't see them and they are so small, they have such fantastic shapes and
Mm,
forms and colors, and you can see shapes where on the micro level, like the spiral in Spiralura, for
mm,
example, it goes all the way through the universe, all to the galaxies, and the same shapes reappear from micro to macro level. And I think the beauty of nature is amazing. And
mm,
I can't stop. I never get tired of looking at these specimens and to see them under the microscope in real time and see them moving, see how they are bubbling with
mm,
life. If you look
mm.
inside them, and you can actually see the photosynthesis ongoing in there, and it's
It's
some
amazing.
crystals moving around.
Yeah.
Um, so I think they are really beautiful. But I think in general, I think nature photography, if you consider this to be nature photography, some people don't do that, but I do.
I do too.
Even nature photographers are struggling with getting their work seen as art, right? I mean,
Mm,
landscape, I think, are doing a better job. Nature photography, animals are having a more of a struggle. Some people like these images. Some people think they are creepy. They don't want to see the
yeah.
eye of a fly.
My wife won't look at my bug shots.
No,
She doesn't want to see them at all. So
but I think they're beautiful. I
I
think
do
bug
too.
shots are real. I mean, there's amazing designs of these bugs, right? The
Yeah.
eyes and the different parts and the
Yeah.
eyes and
Mm,
the 8 eyes of a spider and so on. So I think
mm.
it's amazing.
I'm waiting now to find. We have the cicada, the like little Matchbox cars with wings,
Yeah.
and there was one dead on my balcony a few days ago, but it was in the middle of some pigeon crap, so I decided to give that one a
Ah,
miss.
okay. Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to getting. There's usually one or two drop and die on the balcony a year, so I'm going to get some of the eyes and see if I can get some good specimens. But I think we're just about coming towards the end of my list of questions. Can people find you online? I know your website. Can you tell us where to go? And I'll put links into the show notes.
Yes, I mean my website is my first name last name.com. So it's I need to spell it almost. Hakan
Yeah.
Kvarnstrom, Håkan
Okay. And
But
I
it's
will make sure. Mm.
easier to find me on the Instagram, and you can find the link to my webpage on
Mm.
the Instagram as well in my profile. So it's Micromundus Photography.
Yeah. Mundus is world, right?
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
Micro Worlds.
Yeah, excellent. So I look forward to continuing to learn from you as I watch these accounts. I've been, a huge fan of your Instagram account. I will put all of the links to your stuff in the blog post, and the blog post for this is going to be at mbp.ac/750. And is there anything else that you wanted to share with the audience before we wrap up, Håkan?
I'm not sure. I think we covered
Yeah.
a lot of interesting topics, and I'm looking forward to talking to you sometime again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be picking your brains on the camera adapter as well. But
yeah, let's work on that. See if we can find a solution. I will
Yeah.
try to build mine now for the medium format cameras, and then
Wow.
see how we can adopt it to your setup as well.
Yeah, I've actually found one that I think is pretty much what I want. It's a very wide field. It goes into the C mount rather than the smaller tube, and it gives you a really big wide image, or like almost pretty much to the edges of the circle. So I'm trying to get them to loan me one for a week to see if it will actually
that's good.
work. If I can get that.
I mean, the important part is that you have the objective. Normally, objectives have an image circle of maybe 20 to 25 millimeters. The cheaper ones maybe 18 or 20, and the more expensive objectives 26.5 even. And then you need to magnify that a little bit to fill the sensor. Otherwise, you will get dark corners on your images. So to find those lenses that will magnify just enough to fill the sensor, but not too much, because then you are losing so much working area. So you need to find the sweet spot. Depending on the camera you have and the size of the sensor you have. So,
well, the one that I'm looking at, they say it gets you just inside the image circle. So if it does, I'll be happy. Currently, I'm
for a full format camera, then.
Yes, yeah. So, but it's $900. So
that's the issue.
Yeah,
it costs more than your microscope.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll wrap it up there. Really, thank you so much, Håkan. It's been an amazing hour, and I'd love to catch up again at some point. And we'll talk about the other things in the email and see if I can pick your brains a little bit more. But thank you.
Thanks for having me. Very nice to be here.
Not at all. It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so that was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it. As I mentioned, the images and the transcript is at mbp.ac/750. Thanks very much for listening today. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share a link with your friends. Subscribe in iTunes or your favorite podcast program to ensure uninterrupted delivery. If you have a moment to rate the podcast or leave us a review in iTunes, that helps to keep us relevant in the huge number of podcasts out there now. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter, and links to everything that I'm up to are at martinbaileyphotography.com. So do drop by and take a look. I'll be back next week with another episode, but in the meantime, you take care and have a great week, whatever you're doing. Bye-bye.